Hey, Brandon.
Hi, Nisha.
How's it going?
Going well. You're a little muffled today.
Huh, okay. I'm using the same audio device.
Sounds a little better.
I need to figure out my audio video situation anyway.
It doesn't help that I'll have the same headphones for the same music, and the music is always turned much louder than everybody on Zoom.
I don't have any music turned on. It's just that I'm sharing my microphone and camera with the two computers.
Now that adds a challenge.
Yeah. It doesn't help that Bluetooth doesn't work on my personal computer.
That makes it even more difficult. Is that just hardware incompatibility?
I don't know. I haven't bothered to check. I bought this. This computer has been with me for a very, very, very long time. And I don't know what the status of the Bluetooth hardware is, or even if it has Bluetooth. I thought it did.
Now mine is acting funny here. I am going to restart Zoom real quick on my side. Be right back. That's better.
What's fixed?
It didn't like my camera for some reason. So yeah, I don't know how much we've got in terms of specific agenda. I just wanted to keep like a placeholder for people that had questions, comments on what we've been updating on the proposals. Amy, should we put yours up front to talk about the KubeCon meeting?
I mean, like, there's a possibility we could do a meeting there. That is all.
There is a possibility.
Like, I can get some space. Yeah. We're working on getting some space. I wanted to know if there'd be interest.
Yeah.
I think there's interest, but I don't know. Like, it might be too early to plan. Don't know.
There's interest from me if I was there. Sadly, I won't be there. So might be good to get a show of hands of who's going to make it and would like to have a meeting.
Okay. All right. So there's interest. Like, you know, I'll let you all know about like space and that sort of thing as soon as I have it. But it's one of those things where, you know, I recognize that planning for things in August for a October meeting is a little challenging, but this is something likely coming. Cool.
It's also a good time to be planning this stuff because October shows up faster than everybody thinks it does. So I see Jason's interested. Anybody else?
I can send out something towards like mailing list as well, to be able to get like a little bit more. I mean, this meeting is somewhat lightly attended, so.
It is. Sasha, are you going to make it?
I won't be able to make it. So
you're not making it.
I wonder if there's a way to be able to do this hybrid again, because that's pretty much like the way that we've done this before. Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay, I will get some details over on my end about like what is the availability for like people sitting around on Zoom and that sort of thing. Kind of like we did for Seattle last year.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Sasha, how about you? Are you going to be making it to Denver?
No.
Or sorry, Detroit. Not to
No.
Detroit.
I mean, you could go to Denver too. That's fine. No, it's
I
fine.
mean,
Okay.
if it
All
was
right.
Denver,
So
you might get some more people. Yeah, let's ping the Slack and the mailing list and see what folks have to say about it.
yeah.
Just have your hand raised up, right? So I don't know if you had something to say or suggest.
Oh no, I was just raising my hand because of I
All
thought
right.
it would go down.
Before I
So-
ping the Slack and everything else, let me make sure we can do like hybrid things because that would make people sad. If I can only do things in the room, then we should probably not do it. But if we can do hybrid, then I'm more inclined to be able to move forward. So
I mean, I get FOMO if I'm not there and it's not hybrid, but I understand. So
I'm reasonably certain we can make this one work. I just want to be able to double check. That's all.
Yep. Cool.
Great.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, happy to help.
All right. So other than that, we've had a bunch of updates to our PR. Is there interest in going through those? I know we don't have, I don't see Mike over here, so I don't know how much we're going to get in terms of feedback for some of the stuff we've been changing. Or is everybody just looking for an extra hour out of their day?
I'd be happy to listen if you can explain the changes because I was on vacation last week and didn't get a chance to review it.
Sure. I'm just moving windows around so I can do a share here. 1 second. So we got distribution and we got the other tab that went somewhere different. Good times moving tabs around. There we go. All right, let me share a screen. So yeah, distribution and image spec. Got a handful of things we have updated in here in the past week or so. A couple force updates and whatnot. I don't know if there's a good way to say just show everything that changed since the last meeting. I guess I could go in there and find a specific commit and do a diff.
You could go to the PR branch, the OCI Playground PR branch. Well, you could have clicked there. Never
It
mind.
was so close and then Google search kicked in. I hate, like, okay, so if we go and pull this, are you thinking of these?
In the diff, there's a drop
in
down.
in the working group proposal clicky thing. Okay.
So you're thinking over in the PR itself.
Yeah.
And the PR has a drop down that'll help you show from commits.
This branches were so many commits there. Which drop down are you both thinking of?
It is in the pull request. It has to go to the pull request.
Okay, well, that was where I was.
So you go to files changed, and then over there, there's a, yep, on the left, there'll be a drop down. Changes from which commit you want to see.
Okay, so let's see if we can go back like 1 week. So I think that would be useful for folks. 8 days ago, so let's see what changed since 8 days here. And this is just the image one. And I don't know how well some of these things will line up because stuff moved around a lot. We add a dot. That's not impressive there. Let's see.
This is an image spec or distribution spec? Oh,
Okay, apparently I'm in distribution spec. I thought I hadn't reordered, but yeah, distribution spec. And this part, I think I was covering a little bit. Let me take the comments out of this because they might distract me a little bit. This is in the spec itself. And so this is in the push, I think. Sorry, without seeing more context to what was above here. Guess I can tell it to show me more, can't I? Okay, so in the listing, when we do a listing, so if the listing is successful, then great, we got a response there. This shows what's in the listing. And so each one's got to be a descriptor with an artifact type, where the artifact type comes from. So I kind of gave mapping there. It comes from the artifact type in the artifact manifest, or the media type in the image the media type of the config descriptor in the image manifest. So I'm kind of giving some guidance on where we're pulling the stuff up from. One thing I'm catching on what I've been doing here, this was pulled from some other documentations. We moved stuff around because we didn't want to have a separate distribution spec.md and the client stuff. And so I pulled it all together. I defined up top in the client stuff, artifact means this, image means that. We might need to be more specific of saying what artifact manifest means. I don't know if we need to put a description up top for that or something.
You
And
could
let's
link
see.
it to the image spec artifact.md.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I did the definition of them elsewhere, that was what I was doing, is I was linking it specifically over to those files. So I'm debating if I want to put like a little, just kind of a, oh, what's the right word for it? Something up top just to say, here are all the terms we're defining. And just include that. That way we don't have to keep redefining it every single time. Go ahead.
I just noticed that the artifact type is SBOM, and I remember in the image spec I got I got feedback that said maybe use a different kind of artifact, not specifically. I use signature, and then
We
I
had
changed it to
one-
ice cream.
We had one that was like cosines specific signature type. And so I just switched it over to application example SBOM.
Okay.
And so this is just an example SBOM. We're not even picking which SBOM flavor we like out of this thing. We're just saying it is an SBOM.
Yeah, I used ice cream.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we want to be consistent with that or not.
So we are consistent because I've switched on both sides. So I've got the
Okay.
I've got
So
the same example
changed the
over an image.
Okay.
Yeah. My fear when we had those saying ice cream is that anybody that's coming and looking at this after the fact that doesn't know what we've been doing in the working group is going to be like, what on earth are they talking about?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So let's see, descriptors we define, okay, they must include annotation. So this is where we're saying we have to do the pull up. And so we're pulling up the various descriptors. We've got a query results in here. Okay, if the query results in no results, then an empty manifest must be returned. So this kind of goes back to people saying, is it a 404? Is it some of these other options in there that we've been looking at? So that kind of covers a bit of that. Get the chat window open just in case people start talking. And let's see. And then if ref doesn't exist, I do say that you may return empty list. So this is the thing I'm querying, the reference to that manifest. It doesn't exist. You can return an empty list. You have to return a manifest here, but the manifest can have an empty list in there. Or if you want to, you can return everything that's referring to that ref if you'd like to. No problem for me there. But then once ref exists, everything that had been created before then has to be included in there. And I think we define that elsewhere in here. Let's see, we define. Go ahead.
If you don't mind, Brandon, I have a general question about the feedback. It seems to me that most of the questions we get is about like backwards compatibility or upgrade path. Do you think that we should explicitly point out, like make a document for the upgrade path?
We do have something we'll get to at the very end that says what the registry server needs to do for an upgrade. We don't call out the different workflows in here of saying, okay, here's kind of the logical stuff we're thinking of. specifically, it's kind of, it comes out of what the spec says. I really want to make, after we're all done with this, throw out a blog post. And it can be over on the OCI page of saying, here's just our overall vision of what this is going to look like, just to give people some context that can sometimes be difficult to package together in a spec itself.
Yeah. Okay.
If there's something we're missing on upgrading that belongs in the spec, definitely let's put it in there. But I'm looking for like exactly where it belongs in terms of, if we're talking about the registry server doing stuff, we've got a couple things to find in there. A lot of
So
the
there
comments I've
was-
been, go ahead.
There was one question about what happens if the refers API doesn't exist and someone makes a client makes this kind of call. And I think the spec says that if the API doesn't exist, then you return a 404, but it may not have been that, or maybe it was difficult to, I mean, you still have to go through the spec and find that.
Yeah, I think that's the default everywhere in the registry. If you get a request for something you don't recognize, it's just a 404 at that point. But we can easily call that out in addition, just to say, hey, if you don't support this, it's a 404. But the challenge I'm getting to for that is that I think we want to say, if you are OCI compliant with 1.1 of the distribution spec, you must support this. So it's not like you can choose to turn this API off and still be 1.1 compliant with at least this part of the spec. And there are different parts of the spec you can be compliant with different pieces.
Yeah, okay.
That's always a challenge of how much do we define of, here's what it looks like when you aren't doing the spec, when we're supposed to be saying, here's how you follow the spec. Not an easy line to walk there. Let's see, the link header, I went through a bit of that, and then how that looks. I think we just kind of add a few more words in here. I think that was some of the feedback we got from some of the PR reviews. And then for filtering, got some details in here. I think we add this in 12b, so we're just defining filtering a little better in here. So if we go down to those endpoints down below, we'll see an extra field in there. And then how that applies. I did change, I don't think we got the right people here for this, but we do have Michael Brown here, at least AWS Michael Brown. I changed the annotation from references to refers, just because I wanted to keep that consistent with everything else we were doing within this API.
Sweet.
Wasn't sure if anybody saw references, they might not know the history behind that. So it's like same words everywhere as best I can, even though refer seems to be universally disliked.
That works for me.
Cool. And let's see, example change. So I streamed to SBOM through the SBOM example down here. Since I documented that we're pulling up the artifacts, annotations, and stuff like that, I didn't put them in this output just in case someone's trying to copy paste, and then we just have direct JSON. And that was all the changes we made over the past week for this file. Not too much. I think the big thing is we don't have, I think it's going to be on the other proposal where we did this. So I say show all the stuff that changed from the last week with this one. Or is this only showing one commit? I want to see all the commits from A to B. That might be why I thought we were seeing too few things in there. I don't think we get a range. There's no like shift click or anything in here, is there? No, I don't know what that's doing. Oh. I'm learning GitHub, so we're doing this, don't worry. Did that take? Okay, what's the magic keystroke? Anybody know it?
Not I. I think it's fine.
Oh, I get it. Shift and then click and arrange.
Okay.
So that means I should go back to this because we looked through this and we only showed apparently 2 commits in this, and there's been more. So let me start with here to here. That was the big thing that we did over the past week, and that was why I was like, why I'm not seeing it. We took the client implementation file out. And we have a new backwards compatibility section over here. And let's see. One question we got is what happens if the registry, are we allowed to push a refers field that points to a manifest that doesn't exist in the registry yet? And so this was in response to that saying you can push the signature before you push the image that the signature is signing. And that should be okay for us. And so we're saying should on this one, where we've been saying on other places, a registry can reject if you don't have a reference already pushed. And that's for like blobs. If you have an index that has manifests are missing, or if you have a image that has blobs are missing, the registry can say, yep, it's not there. You're going to fail with a blob unknown error. And here we're saying you shouldn't do that for this one field.
So you shouldn't do it. Okay. That means
You should accept a manifest with a refers that
okay.
points to something that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Yeah, the fear was
but you can implement that registry that'll say like, okay, yeah, manifest blob unknown.
Yep, which that happens already. Of course, they all say blob unknown even when they're talking about a manifest, which confuses me.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Our notes now that said, hey, go look at the implementation file is gone because that file is no longer there. And so now instead, what happens is when we get to the end of the push section, we say, if you're pushing something that has a refers field, you need to do these extra steps if this API returns a 404. And so I'll link over to the API we're talking about. If that gives you a 404, you must do all these steps. And so the same
Small
here.
nit from my end, I think that refers has to have a small r.
Okay, we can change those. I think I was looking at that earlier thinking I should probably change that too. So good call out. And then, yeah, this is the whole backward compatibility of you pull the index. If you don't have an index, you make one that's empty. And let's see, you assume that it's empty. You verify that it's already there. If your descriptor is already there, you can skip it. If it's not, you have to add it in there. You have to pull up the artifact type. You have to pull up the annotations, and you have to push a new index. So we have those steps all listed out. Oh, we see people kind of coming off mute there. Feel free to jump in. Let's see, on the field over here, that was the period from before. On this one, I think we've already looked through a bunch of this. Descriptors, artifact type, yeah, I think this was what we'd already looked at. The example we already talked about, changing the SBOM. The link we already talked about. We already talked about that example. And then here's the fallback if the refers API is a 404. and you're pulling a listing, then you fall back to this refers tag schema, and the response should be an index that has the appropriate content. And then let's see. And so if both the refers API and the tag schema return 404, then you can basically say the client should just say there are no refers as manifest. It's implicitly an empty list at that point. And so if I'm linking over to this refers tag schema, I'm going to have that down below. So I'll get to that in just a second. And content management, we've got deleting an image. So if you delete an image or an artifact that's got the refers field, you should also go through and find anything that's got that that tag schema for it, assuming you've got a 404 for that, and then go clean up the entry from that manifest list. And so that's just kind of being a good community member of saying, okay, my manifest is gone. Let me go back and get rid of everything that was pointing to that manifest. That's an extra step there that I need to still implement on my side. Okay, here's the backward compatibility part where this came out of the client implementation file. And so we're saying, hey, client implementations must support a partial registry. So registry only gives you some of the APIs, or that might be an older version. And here's the fallback procedure. And so this language came out of talking with Mike last week, IBM Mike, where he said, start with must, and then we can always fall back later on and say, okay, we can make it a should. If someone wants to make a client that's only 1.1 compatible and doesn't have any 1.0 support at all, we can consider if we need to make that an option to be within the spec at that point in the future. For now, we're saying it's a must that they have to comply with older registries. And so when that happens, we define, here's where I define my terms before. So I might just want to take this stuff and move it up somewhere, put a section up top. And then we've got the tag schema here that just says, here's what the schema looks like. Here's what the result is supposed to look like. It's got, the output's supposed to be an index, and the maintaining of this index is a client responsibility. So they need to make sure they're doing that. If they delete an image or something like that, they need to update it, and it should contain, anything that's got the refers field. And so I'll go through and do a global find and replace for that refers field. Change that lowercase. And let's see. I do point out that we've got race conditions with this. And so protecting against that, it's either responsibility of client to figure that out, end users to figure it out, or you can upgrade to a registry that provides the refers API, and magic happens. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And in addition, I'm saying potentially you could do this conditional HTTP push with the E tag. If a registry supports that, great, you can use that as well. We haven't really defined that within the distribution spec yet in terms of do registries need to support that and how. So this is kind of a little bit forward looking here. I would not be offended if someone says delete that line out of this file, but I figure we give people a little bit of an idea of potential other ways they can work with this. And this was that file I was looking for earlier, which was upgrading what do registries and whatnot need to do. So I took out the little client implementations in there, but we go through and say registries need to convert over certain fields, and they must include anything that has one of those, the tag schema. Anybody's got the tag schema, those must be transferred over, and they may include other things they want to. So there we go, bunch of changes. The big key step here was that we got rid of the separate, which was what took me so much time, getting rid of this client implementation file. So everything that wasn't here got moved within the spec elsewhere.
Looks much better. This looks awesome.
It did mean we added another section of table of contents. I'm waiting for someone to say, no, you can't add another section to the table of contents. I'm sure someone will find a reason to complain. All right, we've got now 5 commits we're talking about over here. I think we got all the right ones. Yeah, that looks good to me. This is what changed in the image spec. So I pulled in more annotations up top, things that we were defining. So the artifact created, artifact description. I also made the RFC a link and put that down below. I really want to, after we're all done with this, do a massive markdown reformatting, change this to like backticks instead of bold things, and change this to, standardize how we're making lists, but that is something completely outside of what we're doing here. End of that file, we've got the RFC in there. So this was just we changed for annotations. So just centralize those instead of putting those in different files. And the artifact, let's see, we've got the should here for the media type. We point over that it's defined within the RFC. What I did was said that it must comply with the RFC, including yada yada for that section. And it may be registered with IANA. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. And so this kind of puts the onus on the end user. Hey, if you're not going to register yourself with IANA, it's your problem if someone else steps on your same name. But if you do, then great, you've staked your claim to it. But at the very least, anybody parsing this should be able to parse that field, and it should look within that format that's defined within the RFC with like the application / something. We fixed the blobs. Thank you for that one, Sajay, to get that from string to an array of objects and then fix the terminology on those. And let's see, same for the refers, said that it's a descriptor instead of a string. And then we standardized the definition for refers. So we've got this defined in 2 different places. We just copied and pasted the same definition in both places. So we got that down to a single thing. And then I linked over to the refers API and said, hey, look over there to see how we're using this thing. And let's see, following may be used. I got rid of all of our annotations here and just said, hey, go see the predefined annotations. So we got all the definitions in one place. And then why would you have an annotation? Well, I referred you over the refers API, say filtering may be possible on the output of that thing because we're pulling them up. So the client can do some filtering on that. And then, like I said, Nisha, we changed over all the ice cream examples to SBOM. And there is I think I've got a signature in here as well, but it's like a generic signature. So this is SBOM. This was a random image manifest. And one of them was an SBOM format. So yeah, we've got 2 different things in here, 2 different fields with the different media types. But otherwise, yeah, try to go down to a single example of keeping these things standard. And the same example we copied to the different files. So if someone looks from one file and it goes looks the other file, these should be the same content in both. All right. Descriptor, we had a duplicate definition for artifact types, so we just got rid of the dupe we already had down below.
Oh, wasn't the descriptor artifact type supposed to be in the descriptor though?
It is. It was just in here twice.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we had it up top and then down below. I'm not sure if that might have been just like a bad rebase or if we just got overzealous and just defined a bunch of times in the same file. And this is another one of those places where I went through, grabbed the artifact type description and just copy and paste that different places we used it as best I could, just standardized it. And let's see, OCI artifact manifest. So this is us saying, yes, in the index definition, the index says you must support within the descriptor list these manifest types. And so we add in there saying, well, in an index, you must support not only the image manifest, but now you must also support the artifact manifest. We were debating whether it should be a may or something like that and figured, well, let's throw it in there as a must for the 1.1 version of the spec. If someone doesn't support 1.1, then they wouldn't support all the other stuff we're including in here, and that would be bad. And then we've got image index with a couple of examples here. So I think we're just adding more examples in the different files just so people can see what they look like. And this includes both an image index and an artifact index in here. just so someone can see that you can have mixed. Let's see. Manifest, again, we had the reverse field defined here. We just kind of copy the definition from the other place, I believe. Got the standardized. There was a debate whether or not we needed to have a refers file and then have all the definitions for refers just say, go see that file. But I kind of push back on that because this is only 2 lines of definition. I can copy 2 lines around. And there is an annotations go spec, which I'm discovering these files as we go through and do this stuff. A lot of files I don't have to work with. And so we added the definition for each of these annotations in there as well. Added standard fields for that. And that's what happened this past week, including me learning how to click and pull up multiple commits in GitHub. That was pretty cool. What you got, Sajay?
Brandon, appreciated you walking through this. It's really, really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of stuff change on the last week. I'm not sure how many people had a chance to look through each one of these PRs when we went through and moved stuff all around.
This is recorded, right?
It is.
Yeah. So
It's
it would be
good
nice if you
bedtime
could
recording.
it'd be nice if we could crop up all your explanations and put them together.
I'm thinking it makes great bedtime listening because, you get the nice monotone voice, and then by the end of it, you're just sound asleep. Cool.
Have you ever thought of changing your career to a podcaster who reads bedtime stories?
There is a hope for a future career for me. You never know when you might need it. Cool. Well, that's been what's happening. I'll go through and change the one comment you had there, Nisha. I feel like I've seen that myself, and just so it's changing refers lowercase r. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
So what do we plan to do? I've been trying to ping, I think Lucky's also been trying to ping John to get some feedback. How do we want to proceed from the working group side? Because I think people who want to give comments aren't here, or should be giving comments aren't here.
And as much as I want to say, we just keep pinging them. At a certain point, we're just going to have to say, well, we've got the votes. We can merge this if we wanted to.
All right.
And so the worst that happens is we merge it. Someone comes back and says, you fools, you messed up all this stuff. You need to fix it all. And we say, great, send a PR.
Yeah.
And we can always do another PR down the road.
We have time to release or cut a tag or something like that. So
that's a great comment, because we absolutely do. And we've been getting the pressure. I think, Sajay, you were on that PR as well, or issue as well, where they were saying, hey, we want a 1.0.3 tag of the image spec. I believe that was what that was for.
Because the data field got merged, and that should have released a Go spec file for supporting that field in different places. And it's clear, but I think people want it. So
yeah. So for whatever reason, they want that one little small change in there. I'm like, okay, we can put that in. My thought is, let's finish up. We've got our hands full right now getting this one solid as best we like it, and fix some little tweaks there, make sure we got the lowercase on certain fields and all the other little minor details we keep missing. Finish that, get that merged into main, and then go back. The releases are over on a branch, I believe. And so go find all the commits before we merge this in and whatever the last stuff was, and just do a rebase over on the 1.0. Whatever branch.
Sounds good.
And then cut a .3 off of that. So that gives us something to do, not next week, because I think if we'll have our hands full, just hitting the merge button on this next week. But the week after, it'll be good to do a little bit of maintenance on stuff like that. And then once we get this done, I'll probably, like I say, I want to do some markdown maintenance, just clean things up, make it look pretty. So I'll probably be going through the specs, submitting a bunch of little PRs, no substantive change, just making stuff prettier. standardized.
Thank you so much. I mean, you have taken like I think the major heavy lifting has been done by you. So I do want to give you credit for that. That's really,
Uh-huh.
It's been a team effort. We've had a lot of people doing some lifting on this.
Here though on the Brandon Love going out.
Very much so.
I appreciate all the help we've been getting on making this happen, because we've had a lot of people putting heads down this one. Josh isn't here today to get the Josh love. But yeah, a whole lot of effort for this thing. Cool. So we've got stuff to do still, little minor tweaks on this thing. Overall, I think nobody on here should be surprised by this, because I think everybody here that has been trying to follow it has been probably following along with individual PRs. Yeah. And then next week, hopefully we get this thing merged.
So do we have anyone who is, well, okay, maybe that's a question for another time, but what about the current status of the working group? Is it just in standby mode?
yeah, we discussed this last week, where we have to figure out whether we archive the repo once this is merged, what the next steps are. I don't think there's an answer yet, but potentially there's not much going to happen in the working group, because all the discussion is happening in the PR at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we imagine having a meeting next week on Tuesday? I would be totally happy to skip, as always.
I would also be totally happy to skip.
It sounds like, it sounds like unless someone is like, wants to use that as a forum to discuss the PR, there's not really a lot for us to talk about except, advocating for the PR to folks and clarifying it wherever we can.
Yep. I think, unless there's anything that comes up between now and then, we'll just officially say skip for now.
Sounds good.
Yay.
Yeah.
One less meeting. Yeah. And then after this, Nisha, I think the decision was we're keeping it open just in case this doesn't get approved. If we got massive pushback and we need to do a complete refactor of everything and come out with a proposal G. But that's not happening. I think we're going to get this pushed on through with only minor tweaks so far. Nobody's really complained yet.
Yeah.
So once we finish that, merge this, then I think it's going to be the point that we go back to the TOB and say we're done and start closing up shop on everything, archive and repos. Yeah, all that good stuff. And no more meetings.
Did we get any feedback from the folks in the APAC time zone?
Trying to think.
So
the one
I'm
person I'm thinking of
specifically
is
yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking the one person I'm specifically thinking of is Akihiro, and I feel like he's chimed in on stuff, but not specifically this one off the top of my head.
I remember one comment he made where he said the name referrers was confusing.
Yeah. It is
It is
universally disliked.
but it is universally confusing because we can't really find another name for it in English, I guess.
We've had that issue open for a while of saying, is there something better? And we kind of threw out some ideas, but nothing stuck.
He's welcome to submit a change, like suggest a change. I think maybe he may feel that we would not accept changes, and perhaps we ought to say, no, we actually do want feedback.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we opened the issue up in advance and just said, hey, we're renaming stuff over here. Feel free to come over here and bike shed it and come up with a better name.
Nisha, do you wanna just respond on that? I think hearing from you would also kind of help, like different people.
How can I respond? Should I just send out another poke or send out to the mailing list or personally?
It's on the PR, right? All those comments is not on the PR. Is it separately given?
So there was a separate issue over in the working group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't on the PR. I don't think Akihiro commented on the PR.
I mean, we can even reference that issue into the PR and tag Akihiro and say that, hey, do you want to, is there another suggestion that you want to provide? And we're more than happy to kind of consume it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Part of the
Once the thread is there in the PR, it makes sure that you have more and more amplification of the PR, and that's hopefully will get more eyes on it. That's what.
And part of the challenge of this one, I think, is when we put it over there. Yeah, Josh jumped on there and just said closing his PRs are open upstream repos. And so we've closed the issue. This was issue 41 over in there. So I'll link it here and in our meeting notes as well. If anybody wants to go look at it. There was a bunch of back and forth. A lot of people didn't like it. I'm not a huge fan. The whole reason I opened it up was just saying, hey, does somebody have a better name than that? I want to be camp with. So if someone comes up with a better name that they like, I'm all for it.
You do realize we're going to come up with the perfect name right after we've cut a tag and committed to this being the name. It'll just come to you the second it's too late.
That's the thing. I'm hoping we can do it before we cut that tag, which means
We have image index. Remember, I mean, I hope people remember that.
that's what's been getting me lately is all the comments that have been coming back from IBM Mike have been saying image index every time he says index. I'm like, but we're not putting images in this index. So it just feels like a bad name. But what you gotta do?
The other thing is these fields are things that nobody should technically touch in CLIs or experiences, but definitely when you write code, you would have to kind of do some kind of referring of the fields, and that is maybe a quirky experience. But given that it's a string, I'm open to calling it whatever you want. I'm fine, because a big chunk is just about whether the experience and the behavior is good, right? So if it's just a string change, let's go for it. Even just before we cut, we just do a blanket thing. I think, yeah, it's fine.
For me, it's a find and replace through a bunch of code, not a big deal. So I'm perfectly happy to go through and tweak that at the last minute.
And we can do it even after merge if needed, right? Okay, field name, not happy. This has not been released. We recommend a rename just so that everybody gets on page.
Yeah, we're good to fix this all the way up until we tag a 1.1 release on things. Which, like Jason says, the second we do that, someone's going to come along and say, hey, I got a better name for you. Too late. Cool. Any other topics people want to talk about today? You want some 10 minutes back? I want 10 minutes back.
I'll take 10 minutes back.
Same.
All right. Well, I'll give everybody 10 minutes. Have a great rest of your week, and talk to you next week when we hit merge on this thing.
See you
Thanks
folks.
so much.
Bye.
Right. Thanks.